All right. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode here on the Lure Lab, a part of the Serious Angler Network. And I am your host, Andrew Full. Today, we are diving into a forgotten technique, not just here in the Great Lakes, but basically on all smallmouth fisheries in the northern United States and maybe even Canada. And that is, we are talking about tube fishing with the upper Midwest hammer, Hayden Anderson. If none of you guys follow him on social media, you should really check out his page. He guides, I believe, in northern Wisconsin, and they just catch giant smallmouth over there. So you definitely want to check him out. But first, some housekeeping. Last week's episode was on winter crankbait fishing with the bait man himself, Kevin Baxter. We got into all kinds of crazy wintertime crankbaits and where to fish them, depth ranges and colors, and little tips and tricks to help you put more bass in the boat. But before I keep rambling on here about all the good stuff, let's get Hayden in here and talk about some tube fishing for giant smallmouth. What's up, man? How you doing today?
Doing good. How are you?
Not bad. Are you freezing over there yet?
Yeah, we definitely are. It's been pretty steady snow all winter long. Got blasted pretty hard a couple times, and then it's just been like 2-3 inches. Seems like every week. So we got a whole pile of snow outside right now.
When can you start bass fishing over there? Like when do like the Great Lakes start opening up so you can slide out there and catch them early that cold winter time?
It changes every year. It seems like it varies a bunch. Like last year, we had a really late ice out. I don't think we had ice out till almost the first week of May last year, so that's pretty late. But we've had it years as early as middle of March or end of March. Middle of March would be really early, but typically first part of April seems to be, usually when you can get out there. And ice is in really bad shape right now with all the snow on top of it. It's been
Yeah.
super slushy and hasn't been making very good ice. So I got a feeling this year it might be an early ice out.
Yeah, because you guys usually have like a historically early warm up compared to us over here in the Northeast, right? Like your warm up starts right around that March, but you guys are usually so cold, you got like feet of ice to melt off, so it takes a little bit
Right.
for it all disappear.
Yeah, like last year, it stayed pretty cold, and we had a lot of really, really cold, like 20 below stretches last winter. So the ice was really thick and strong. And then, it starts getting pretty nice in March, but, trying to melt through 26 to 30 inches of ice,
It
it
takes
takes a
a little
long
bit.
time. Yeah.
So as soon as that ice melts, we're gonna digress here. Is the first bait you pick up usually a tube for
Oh,
smallmouth?
it's definitely in the top three, but it's probably my number one dragging bait for sure.
You can't beat a tube any
Right.
time of year for smallmouth. And today we're talking specific like cold water leading into like that pre-spawn or coming into winter, leaving winter. There's like that's my favorite time to throw a tube. So I figured
Mhm.
there's no one better to pick their brain about this than you, because I see all the giants that you catch over there almost until you can't go fishing anymore. So
Yeah,
it's
literally
makes
until
me
you can't
envious.
launch a boat.
Dude, it's nuts. You'd love to be here right now. Like if we had no wind, we can still get out and catch bass right now. Lake Erie is still like
Mm.
37, 38 degrees. A lot of our inland lakes are still open, but my boat's an hour away. Otherwise, I'd
Yeah,
probably be out on it.
that's tough.
It is what it is. So let's dive right in, though, right? Like, so we're talking tube fishing in the winter, late winter, pre spawn. Where do you target bass with a tube during this cold water time?
So it's usually going to be deep water. It depends on the lake, of course, but most good smallmouth lakes by me are pretty clear lakes, so they winter pretty deep. And so I guess the winter time, I guess for me, it starts in the fall because you're able to follow them to where they'll last hang out for the whole winter throughout the fall. So late fall, wherever you're catching them there, usually is where you're going to find them again right away in the spring when the ice goes. And I even stay occupied throughout the wintertime catching smallmouth through the ice because there's really nothing better to do. But so I'm able to kind of keep tabs on them every couple of weeks throughout the wintertime. And as soon as the ice goes, they don't move very far. But yeah, it's usually going to be deep rock piles, main lake type stuff. It changes on all kinds of different lakes. Sometimes it'll be like a shallower flat, or it varies, but usually a nice deep rocky or sandy type hump.
Did you ever watch like Zona's videos in Michigan of him cracking a tube shallow for largemouth, like right after ice out?
Yeah, I've seen. I think maybe we're even thinking of the same one, but it was like he had like a big warm spell or something weird in like February or some odd thing, and yeah, he was out cracking tubes, and yeah, it was shallow largemouth. That was a weird one.
Yeah,
If we're thinking, but he does that all the time, so we could be thinking about different episodes. But
yeah, I feel like he's done like 7 or 8 episodes like that, but I'm like, that looks like fun. I need to try it. And I've
right,
tried it. I'll be honest. I don't have much sand in my lakes over here on like
okay.
inland bodies of water. And I can't find a place for them to get on it, but I also haven't really tried it a lot.
I've
So
been because he's so good at it, and it's so powerful for him. And I've tried to like emulate exactly what he
yeah,
does, even down to the hook set, because he claims you have to have that hook set to actually get the hook in with all
yeah.
that light fluoro. But it's goofy to get used to. But I've had a little bit of success doing that. There's times definitely when the water's cold where you can kind of do that constant like slack to taut line, just barely hopping it.
Creeping
And
that tube.
yeah, but
It works.
definitely he's obviously onto something, but it's a tough thing to duplicate, I think. But that can be a really good way
When
to
you've been doing it for like probably close to 30 years,
right.
and you
Yeah,
got that
think about how many thousands of smallmouth he probably caught before
and
he even
largemouth, like just
and largemouth before he even like exposed it to
yeah.
any of his TV shows or
So like,
anything.
well, now I have better juice, so I'll teach everyone about cracking a jig
Right.
when the water's 35 degrees. So,
Yeah.
what is your tube setup?
So I have two of them because I like to mix in uh, anywhere from a 2.5 to 2 3/4 size, and I'll throw that on a spinning rod.
Before we talk
All the way.
tubes, though, like let's go
Oh,
rod, reel, and line. I apologize.
that's
I
what I
should
mean. I'm saying
specify.
because I like to
Yeah,
throw the small one on a spinning rod, a bigger one on my bait caster, and so yeah, spinning rod setup. It's usually a 7 foot to a seven. I mean, anywhere from 7 foot to a 7.6 is going to be good, but I like a little bit longer one. So I typically will use a 7.2, and it's actually a medium heavy. Little bit more backbone with the tube is kind of nice because a lot of times your rod tip might be pointed in the air, maybe 11 o'clock position when you're kind of hopping along, dragging it along. And if you get bit right at the top of your drag, it's good to be able to,
yeah.
give it to them
So
and have that
yeah,
immediate backbone right away to drive that home. Because if you're using a medium light or even just a medium, sometimes you might not get a good hook into them.
mhm.
If you get caught with your pants down, kind of right at the top of your drag with your rod pointing straight in the air. So, and that's when a little extra length helps too, having a,
Good thing it's wintertime. They're not probably spitting it out right away. They're a little
right.
slow.
But they're also not grabbing it that good either.
It's
So
true. Yeah, give and
yeah,
take. So
right.
your
Exactly.
casting setup.
Yep. Casting setup. That's going to be a 7.6 medium heavy, and just a fast action, not like an extra fast. Because I like to be able to have, kind of opposite of what I was just saying with the spinning rod. I like to have a little bit more bend on my bait caster because you're going, uh, a little heavier weight, but it's nice when you're setting the hook with a bait caster, having a little extra absorption to, play those fish deeper
Absolutely.
and on a long cast like that. So,
Are you using
um,
like an 8-to-1 gear ratio reel too?
yes, because I go straight fluoro on my bait caster setup, and so yeah, I like to go a fast reel because a little bit of that stretch in the line on a long cast, you got to be able to crank down and uh, pick up all that line.
So
So,
is it
and usually,
safe? Oh, go
say it
ahead.
again.
I was gonna ask, is it safe to assume that your spinning reel then has braid on it?
Yes. So my spinning reel, I prefer 8 pound braid. I know it's lighter than what a lot of guys would like to do,
You
but
cast it forever.
right. I mean, I've had no issues with it because I'm always tying a leader to it. So I go anywhere from 6, 7, maybe not for a tube, but usually 10 to 12 is my tube line for a spinning rod on my leader.
So your fluoro leader is 10 to 12 pound.
10 or 12 usually, yeah. Because I mean, usually you're fishing around rocks or
Yeah.
something like that, and so um, and early in the season they're usually not that picky where they're not going to be super line shy, so you can get away with a little bit heavier line. It doesn't have to be super finesse, but Then on my casting rod is going to be anywhere from 14 to 16 pound. Usually
Dang,
16
the
be about
beans.
the heaviest.
I love it. So,
Yeah.
we're talking about Zona's video, and he uses what, straight fluorocarbon, I think, when he's fishing like a tube
Yeah,
shell.
when he's doing his, tube cracking setup, he goes straight 8-pound fluoro on a spinning rod.
Huh.
And I think he uses like a 7.3 or something,
Hmm.
medium or something, I want to say.
Yeah,
But then,
I've always teetered back and forth on like the braid to fluoro and straight fluoro for a tube. I think personally for me, I like straight fluoro for a tube for whatever reason. I don't lose as many fish. And I think it's because when you're dragging it out in Great Lakes, because of the half ounce or 3/8 ounce head with a little bit more stretch, it's when that weight gets swinging in their mouth when they come up and jumping, I feel like they don't throw it as easily with that
yeah,
fluorocarbon stretch.
yeah, I can see that for sure.
I lose a ton of fish on a tube running
Do
braided
you?
fluoro. Yeah, it drives me
Is that right?
nuts.
Hmm, interesting.
I'm not the greatest tube fisherman either, so it could be my rod setup, and that's just because it's a forgotten technique. 10 years ago, it's all I would have used, and then I found
Hmm,
a Ned rig.
right.
So, all right, well, let's dive into it. You like tubes that are 2.5 and 3.5. So, what are your favorite tubes? And then maybe throw a couple colors out there that you like to use, and when you go to those colors.
Yeah, so I'll start with the sizes. So 2.5 or 2 3/4. Did you say what ones? What
Yeah,
like
like
brands you're saying? Yeah.
yeah, brands.
Yeah. Strike King makes a really nice little bitsy tube. That one, I believe that one's a 2.5.
Mhm.
It might even say 2 3/4 on the package, but I feel like it's closer to a 2.5. It's definitely smaller than some of the other ones I like to use. But that's a good one. Kind of a thinner body to it. Like it's not a lot of plastic between
Mhm.
the jig head and the you know. So that's a good one. A little bit more finessey. The other one I like is the X Zone. They have a nice tiny little tube, and they offer it in quite a few good colors. So those are two of my favorite little ones. And yeah, I mean, I'll just randomly see other packages or other brands of the that make the tiny ones and pick them up and try them out. The Maxent ones is pretty good too. Plus, it's soaked in Maxents.
It
That's
just falls apart after like a
right.
half.
Yeah, it's
If you
super
hit a
soft.
rock with it, it falls apart just right.
Right.
So,
But it is. I mean, it's solid option, and maybe if you're doing more dead sticking or something like that, it might not matter as much. Plus, it'll have a little extra scent. Um, but then as far as 3.5 or sometimes even 4 inch. Tough to get again, tough to go wrong with a Strike King coffee tube. Those are some of the best ones I think. And then also let's see, Poor Boys Baits makes some nice tubes. Those ones are actually 4 inch though.
mhm.
You can always trim the appendages down a little
Yep,
bit if you want to
make them a little shorter.
shorten it up. They make a nice one too. Let's
You
see.
ever use like the ISG tubes? I think they're called.
Yes, that was
Yeah.
one I was forgetting. Yep, that's actually that's a nice one too. That one's actually the little one anyway, is really similar to the Strike King Bitsy tube, I
Mhm.
think. I
Yeah,
think
I
they're good.
agree.
Yeah.
They're like I think they're double dipped. That's the only thing I don't like about ISGs is like the head of them is super tough, but they
Okay.
have great action and a ton of salt on them. So
Right.
they're good tubes. They're just very tough. I'm personally am like a big Poor Boys tube. Like those are pretty much the only ones I
Yeah.
ever throw.
They're nice, and they're nice and soft too,
Yeah.
And it's cool they come in nice bulk packages. You order, it's like a $10 for a bag, but you get 25 of them,
Yeah.
so it's pretty
And
that
a tube
actually
usually lasts you if you don't break it off all day, but you can go
right,
through it pretty
exactly.
quick in rocks.
You can
So,
catch 15 fish usually on one tube.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, and then colors, I'm always typically going to be going green pumpkin based. That's kind of, anywhere from just black flake or orange flake, maybe some purple, gold,
Yeah.
maybe it just depends on if
You
you got
really
some.
don't need anything else besides maybe like
No,
I've actually caught a lot of big smallmouth on a watermelon red tube on like bright sunny calm days, but that's like the only time I'll
interesting.
throw it. Yeah.
Sure.
So in
Yeah.
the Bass Pro Tender tube, I don't know if you've ever used
I've
those.
never used one. I hear about them
Yeah.
and never tried them, but do they make them anymore? Is that
They
part
still
of
do.
the
Yeah.
You
They
do?
still make
Okay.
them. Yeah, and they're
You'll have to give those a try.
super fragile. So you gotta be
Okay,
careful what tube jig head you put into them, but they're good.
gotcha.
So,
Yeah,
well,
that makes sense.
now that we're on the topic of tube jig heads, what do you like here? Are you like a long cylinder guy? Are you like one of those round fat headed ones that imitate gobies? Or I've seen guys that shove like a football jig head in there. Which tube head do you use, or is it all situational
It's
based?
all three of them, and it's always, yeah, I use all three different styles, and it's always situational. Um, I like to, on the baby tubes, I typically will use a small football head. Any owner and Gamakatsu both make little football heads that have the right size hook that fits in them. And most of the time, I'm throwing like a quarter ounce, 3/16 or a quarter ounce. A tiny tube like that, even in deep water, that you don't need to really bump it up to a 3/8. It doesn't seem like, not very often anyway, because it's so small, it sinks pretty easy. Light line, you can keep a quarter ounce down pretty easy. So I like using a little football head with those. But as far as the bigger tubes, I'll use some of the fatter ones. Most of the time, that's what I'll start with, is the kind of the goby imitating style,
Mhm.
fat head tubes. Um, but there are times where I think if they're really choking it and you're setting the hook, that the big bulbous head sometimes will pop the mouth open,
Mm.
and it'll come right out and you'll be missing fish, but they're hitting it really hard. So you're wondering, well, why am I missing them? But then I found it where I'll go to just a, you
Like the
know,
long cylinder style,
long
like
cylinder style one.
streamline it.
I carry those in the same weights for situations like that. And
And you feel like you lose less fish when you
yeah,
switch.
it seems like it, maybe on a calm
Interesting.
day when I mean, there's a million different situations where it could, kind of pan out. But I've seen like the hookup ratio will go up a little bit when you do that.
Hmm.
So,
That's
and
very
like
interesting.
the fall can be different too between those two head styles.
Mhm.
The long cylindrical style head seems like it'll give it way more of a, spiral on the fall,
Yeah,
since it's kind of, the weight's kind of spread throughout the tube versus all right at the head.
makes sense. So, Hayden, it
Yeah.
sounds like you are the type of guy that when you go tube fishing, you probably have 8 rods rigged up with 8 different tubes and colors and
If
head
they're eating it,
styles.
you gotta have a handful of different
Yeah,
rods ready.
it's awesome. I
Yeah.
I definitely wanna get back into tube fishing this year, and I keep like, "I really gotta do this," and now you're gonna make me go out and buy a bunch of different heads. Well, I should say buy, I don't have to buy, I can actually pour my own heads
There
with
you go.
the do-up mold, tube jig mold
Yeah.
that I have, so I should really just do that instead of
Yeah, I should.
wasting all my money on tube jig
Yeah,
heads.
I need to put in my order with you. Break them off as often as we do.
Oh, it's
I need to
terrible.
get a bulk order. Yeah.
Yeah, I've actually yet to pour a tube jig head, so I'd be
Yeah.
interested because I love messing around with like hooks and what the best
Mhm.
hook is and stuff because it's all situational. I found different hooks are good for different rods too. Like it's just
Sure.
wild how technical we can really get down
Yeah.
into the nitty gritty of bass fishing when really ultimately it's just confidence and you can catch a
Mhm.
fish on anything. So, but
Yeah, confidence is so big.
yeah, it's crazy. If you don't have confidence, you ain't catching fish. So,
Yeah.
but Hayden, last question, and I'll let you run here. And it's the juice of the show that has been customized by Do It Molds. If you'd like to create your own custom tackle, make sure you check out the link below in the show description. So, the Do It Molds juice of the show is, what is one customization tip or modification you do with your tube jigs to help you put more fish in the boat?
So two things that I will do. So first thing that I'll do if I feel like I need to, alter the color even more on my tube, maybe if I don't have exactly what I want, or they've got fish maybe or spitting up crayfish, I always have these. I think they're spike it markers. They, little orange tip spike it marker. You can kind of color the tip of the tentacles on them to kind of give off that, claw
Yeah,
orange tip. Um,
it's a great tip.
or sometimes even color up the belly, or do whatever you want with it, kind of customize that tube that way. And the other thing I'll do too is try to really utilize the inside of that, that hollow part of the tube, and take some sort of a, paste or jelly style scent, and squeeze it inside of there to kind of, obviously then you got some scent. It can never hurt, right?
Yeah, I think the
And
big thing on that too is not tearing up your tube jig as you're sliding one of those big bulbous heads in there like a football
right,
head
that too, yeah,
or
kind of
a
using
goby
it to,
style head. Yeah.
yep. Yeah, and then just even after it's in there and after you've been fishing with it for a little bit, just kind of adding a little bit right into the back there, and fill up that space to, because it once it's inside there, it stays a lot better than if it was on the outside of your bait. So it lasts a lot longer sitting inside there.
Do you feel like that gets you more bites when you do that?
I like it. I like to do it definitely when it's water's cold. So
Yeah.
just like we're talking about right now, I'll pretty much always have something on the inside of the tube.
Scent is huge in cold water
Yep.
for like no matter if you're not even fishing for bass, like whatever species you go for,
Yeah,
like
for sure.
for whatever reason, the more scent you can use in the cold water, the more bites you get. So thank you for that awesome tip. I appreciate it. So Hayden, well, I want to say thank you for joining us here on the Lure Lab on this new show here on the Serious Angler Network. We're closing in on 20 episodes. So I am glad we're able to get you on here, and I'm sure we'll get you on more in the future talking other techniques for smallmouth as the show continues to grow and expand. So I'm going to let you run for now, and we'll chat soon, buddy.
Sounds good, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you. We'll see you later.
See ya.
Bye now. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in to this week's episode of the Lure Lab, where we discussed wintertime tube jig fishing. Hayden is an absolute animal up there in Wisconsin, catches a ton of big smallmouth on tube jigs. So, like I said at the beginning, no one better to get on this show to talk tube jigs, in my opinion, than Hayden. So, but as always, if you're tuned in on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. Leave a comment below, maybe what your favorite tube jig is or your setups that you use, colors, and when you throw them. We love to see that feedback. We love trying out the baits that you mentioned to us. So that's one of the best parts about this. If you're on Apple or Spotify, please leave us a review. It allows us to see and be reached to more bass heads like ourselves here and everyone who's tuning in. It's awesome to see the show grow, the Serious Angler Network grow, and we can't do it without the support and viewership of everyone who tunes in every week. So thank you very much for that. But until next time, stay tuned for next week's episode.